All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. In 3+ seasons as the head coach of the Washington Commanders, Ron Rivera, for the most part, has hovered around 500. But so far this season, the bottom appears to be falling out for Washington. After the Commanders won their first two games of this season, they've lost seven out of their last nine, and included in those seven losses are a pair of defeats to the New York Giants, the 3-8 New York Giants, who beat them with a backup quarterback in Tyrod Taylor back in week number 7. And then this past Sunday, it was an undrafted rookie in third string quarterback Tommy DeVito that basically picked Washington apart. I mean, the Commanders lost to the Giants at home this past Sunday in spite of the fact that they were heavy favorites. And defensively, the Commanders had Tommy DeVito out there looking like a prime Aaron Rodgers, while this Giants defense was ready to play as they forced six Washington turnovers. Now, you look at so many issues with this Commanders team on both sides of the football. I mean, quarterback Sam Howell, he's not playing behind a great offensive line, but Sam Howell is not going to make people, compare him to Joe Theismann either. But you're talking about a young man who has been sacked 51 times so far this season, and Washington still has 6 games to go in their season. And I mean, there's been too often where Howell has finished a game where he's sacked like 7 or 8 times. And again, with the sacks, you can just double that for the amount of times that he's being hit back there in the pocket as well. So, there's a very strong possibility that if Sam Howell starts the final 6 games of this season for the Commanders, he's going to easily be sacked 70 times this year. Now, Sunday's loss to the Giants was a missed golden opportunity for Washington. And I say this because 5-6, when you're trying to chase down that last playoff spot right now in the NFC, sounds a lot better than 4-7. And if you're Washington right now, you're going to sit back and look at those two losses to the Giants, a bad Giants team. And then you're going to also sit back and look at the two close calls that you had with the Philadelphia Eagles. You lost in their building by 3 points in overtime in week number 4, and then you turned around and lost by a touchdown in your place in week number 8. And that was a game that you really had. So it's not that the Commanders are playing bad, but they've had their opportunities and they just have not been able to get over the hump. You look at it right now, things could get worse for Washington, and I say this because they got a short week. They're on the road in Arlington this Thursday to take on a Dallas Cowboys team that is rolling right now. And this side of the Philadelphia Eagles, you can make a case that the Cowboys that nobody's playing better ball in the NFC overall as a conference rather than the Dallas Cowboys right now. They got a ferocious pass rush, which is a recipe for disaster when you're talking about a quarterback and Sam Howell who's being sacked at the rate that he is. And I guarantee you, Micah Parsons and company, they're going to be pinning their ears back and they're coming. Not to mention overall, this team is rolling. You look at Washington; they got a difficult schedule remaining. They got Dallas 2 times. They're on the road this Thursday and they finish up at home with them in week number 18. You still got San Francisco. You still got to go to the Rams after your bye, and then you host Miami right after you take on Dallas. So you're looking at it, and of course, my biggest question is going to be, you know, is Ron Rivera on borrowed time with the Washington Commanders? And honestly, I'm going to say yes because it's year number 4. He was able to get this team to the NFC East Championship back in 2020. The NFC East was terrible that year because remember, Washington won this division with a record of 7-9. They've never finished with a winning record under Ron Rivera. Their best season came last year when they went 8-1. They still finished in 4th place because everybody else in that division was able to make the postseason. But nonetheless, um, I do think Ron Rivera's on borrowed time. It's been up and down there for him. And then on top of this, we got a new ownership group that took over the Washington Commanders not that long ago. They're Josh Harris and company, they're not attached at the hip with anybody on this coaching staff, anybody in the front office for the most part. So at this point, everybody is expendable. And with that said, since the Commanders aren't winning like that, I could see a huge overhaul because if you're Josh Harris and company, you didn't go out there and spend the money that you spent on this team to be mediocre. You spent money to go out there and have results, and you want to have a winner. And you look at it, and it's been like this for quite some time now in the NFC East. There's a huge gap. It's Dallas and Philadelphia up here, and then it's New York and Washington down here. And it's basically, for the most part, Dallas and Philadelphia will swap as far as who's fighting for the top spot in the NFC East. And of course, whoever doesn't finish first, they finish second. While New York and Washington, they've been fighting for about a decade or so, as far as who's gonna not finish in the basement of the division. And this is a Commanders fan base that wants results. You have an ownership group that wants results, and of course, the Commanders. And I say this about a lot of teams: they got a passionate fan base, and they truly do. You think back to the days of George Allen in the 1970s, and then of course Joe Gibbs in the 1980s and early 1990s. That was a great time if you were a fan of Washington football. Obviously, things have not been the same, but nonetheless, these fans want to see results, and you have an ownership group that wants to see results as well. Too many question marks on this Commanders team. You look at them; they're 12th in yards per game so far this season, but they're 17th in points per game. And then defensively, they're 29th in points per game. And then, of course, we just saw them just prior to the trade deadline trade both of their starting defensive ends. You traded Chase Young to the San Francisco 49ers, and then, of course, Montez Sweat to the Chicago Bears. So I think in more ways than one, this team is going to start over. I know that they brought in Eric Bieniemy to remedy this offense in the offseason. Is he possibly sandbagging to try to be a head coach with the Commanders? I don't know. Uh, but nonetheless, I definitely think changes have to be made for this club. I don't see the Commanders rallying to try to finish at 500 at this point in the season. Again, like I said, they had their golden opportunities. You're looking at a Giants team again that's only won 3 games so far this season, and 2 of them are courtesy of the Washington Commanders. So if you're the Commanders, you just sit back and say, well, hey, if we won those 2 games against the Giants, we're 6-5 right now. And if you're 6-5, you're actually in a possession of a postseason spot in the NFC if the season were to end today. So at the end of the day, I think Ron Rivera is coaching his final games as the head coach of the Commanders. If we have a situation where the Commanders get blown out on a nationally televised game on Thanksgiving Day against the Dallas Cowboys, it wouldn't surprise me to see a move made after that. Honestly, after Sunday's loss, because Sunday's loss was bad, okay, to the Giants. Honestly, I think the only thing, in my opinion, that saved Ron Rivera is the fact that hey, it's a short week from moving from Sunday to Thursday to get ready for next week's game, and I think that's a tough task to ask an interim head coach to go out there and try to get a team ready. But again, if you have a situation where the Commanders look bad again on Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys, it would not surprise me over the holiday weekend to see ownership make some changes. But nonetheless, regardless if it happens this week, next week, or next month, I really do think Ron Rivera is coaching his final games with the Washington Commanders. This team needs stability. This team needs somebody who's going to go out there and find and evaluate and develop talent. They don't have that right now. And again, we know changes were coming when Josh Harris and company took over, in the ownership room for the Washington Commanders. And I think this off season, they're really going to put their stamp on this team. And going forward, I don't think Ron Rivera is their guy. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.